Paris, August 31st, 1997, 12:23 a.m. The Alma tunnel shook with the sound of twisted metal. The world's most beloved woman lay unconscious among the wreckage, her life slipping away with each passing second. But what the paramedics didn't know, what the world would never discover that tragic night, was that Diana carried a secret that could have shaken the foundations of the British monarchy. In the last weeks of her life, she had confided in close associates her intention to convert to Islam. Not out of rebellion, not for scandal, but out of true love for a Pakistani Muslim surgeon who captured her heart in a way royalty never could. Today, 27 years later, the royal photographer who kept this secret finally breaks his silence. And what he's about to reveal will make you understand that Diana's death was not just the loss of a princess, but possibly the interruption of one of the most impactful conversions in modern history. A conversion that would have forever changed the relationship between the West and Islam, between royalty and faith, between protocol and true love. My name is Ibrahim al-Rashid. For over 50 years I was the official photographer for the British royal family. I captured thousands of moments of Princess Diana, from her fairy tale wedding to her last days of life. But there's one moment I never photographed, a conversation I never revealed, a secret I carried for almost 3 decades. Today, at 81 years old, I feel it's my responsibility to tell the world what was really happening in Diana Frances Spencer's heart in her final months of life. And believe me, brothers, what you're about to discover goes far beyond what any tabloid ever imagined. Before continuing with this revelation that changed my understanding of faith and love, write in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know what country this historical account is reaching. And if you already knew something about Diana's relationship with Islam, leave it in the comments. Let's begin. It was 1995, and I had already known Diana for over a decade. As a Muslim photographer married to a British Christian woman named Caroline, I represented something she was beginning to desperately seek, proof that love between different cultures and religions could work. But I had no idea that she would soon approach me with questions that would keep me awake for weeks. That year, Diana met Dr. Hasnat Khan, a brilliant Pakistani cardiac surgeon who worked at Royal Brompton Hospital in London. And it wasn't just any encounter. Diana had gone to visit a friend who was recovering from heart surgery when she saw him for the first time. Hasnat was leaving the operating room, still in his medical uniform, completely oblivious to who she was. He treated her with polite indifference, spoke briefly about the procedure he had performed, and went on his way. For the first time in her life, Diana was not treated as a princess, but as a common person. And that, brothers, is what awakened something deep in her heart. But what Diana didn't know was that this casual encounter was predestined to test her in a way that not even her traumatic divorce from Prince Charles had done. Because Hasnat Khan wasn't just a man from another culture, he was a devout Muslim. And to be with him, Diana would have to face not only the opposition of the royal family, but question her entire religious and cultural identity. The question that began to burn inside her was simple, but terrifying. Could I become Muslim for love? Or would this just be a romantic illusion? What happened in the next 2 years was a secret spiritual journey that very few people knew about. And I, Ibrahim al-Rashid, was one of those people. But before revealing what she asked me on that flight that changed everything, you need to understand 3 crucial things about Diana that the media never told. First secret, Diana always felt a deep spiritual emptiness that haunted her since childhood. Despite having been baptized in the Anglican Church in a pompous ceremony filled with dignitaries, despite having married in the majestic St. Paul's Cathedral, before 750 million viewers around the world, she confessed to close friends that Christian ceremonies always seemed empty of true emotion to her. It was like watching a rehearsed theater play, where everyone knew their roles, but no one really felt what they were saying. She once described to a confidant that during her own wedding, while walking down the cathedral aisle in her fairy tale dress, all she could think was, "Where is God in all this? Why can't I feel him here?" The Archbishop's words sounded like distant echoes. The hymns seemed like cold musical performances, and the entire ritual felt more like a social obligation than a transformative spiritual experience. In the following years, Diana repeatedly tried to find spiritual connection within traditional Christianity. She attended numerous private services in royal chapels, participated in spiritual retreats organized by the Church of England, and even consulted priests about her search for deeper meaning. But she always returned with the same feeling of frustration. Something was missing, a direct connection with the divine that the religious protocol of royalty simply didn't offer. "It's like trying to touch someone through 10 layers of glass," she explained once. "You see, you know there's something there, but you can never really reach, feel, truly experience it." She sought something more visceral, more real, more transformative, something that didn't depend on human intermediaries with their political agendas and their rituals fossilized by time. She wanted to feel God directly, without filters, without empty ceremonies, without the crushing weight of tradition that seemed more concerned with maintaining appearances than nourishing souls. What Diana didn't know yet was that this desperate search for spiritual authenticity was preparing her for something she could never have imagined, a journey toward Islam, where the relationship with Allah is direct, without intermediaries, without ecclesiastical hierarchies, just a servant and their creator. Second secret: in the last 5 years of her life, Diana developed a growing and almost obsessive fascination with the Middle East and Islamic culture. And here's something the media never reported correctly, brothers. Her humanitarian trips to Pakistan, Egypt, Bosnia, and other Muslim countries weren't just charity missions. They were disguised spiritual pilgrimages, secret journeys of a soul searching for something she couldn't yet name. In 1991, during her first official visit to Pakistan, something extraordinary happened. Diana was scheduled to visit a children's hospital in Lahore, but when they arrived, she heard for the first time in her life the adhan, the Islamic call to prayer echoing through the city's loudspeakers. Her security guards reported that she stopped completely, frozen in place, tears beginning to stream down her face without her realizing it. "What is this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Why do I feel like my heart is being called?" When they explained it was the Muslim call to prayer, she insisted on visiting the local mosque. Her advisors tried to dissuade her, claiming it wasn't on the official schedule, that it would cause protocol problems. But Diana, for the first time in years, used her royal authority and demanded, "I'm going. Arrange it." Inside the mosque, with her head covered by a silk scarf, Diana observed Muslims praying, and what she saw impacted her deeply. There was no distinction of social class. The beggar prayed next to the wealthy businessman. The simple woman prayed with the same dignity as the educated woman. There were no separate pews for nobles and commoners. Everyone was equal before Allah. Everyone touched their forehead to the same ground. "This is it," she murmured to herself, while tears continued falling. "This is the equality I was looking for. This is the direct connection with God my heart yearned for." From that day on, Diana began a silent transformation. She spent hours talking with local religious leaders during her travels, always with the official excuse of better understanding the local culture for her humanitarian missions. But the questions she asked weren't about culture, they were about faith. How do you feel, Allah? What happens when you pray? Why is there so much peace in the eyes of devout Muslims? She visited mosques when cameras weren't present, removing her shoes at the entrance, covering her head respectfully, sitting quietly in the back, just observing, absorbing, feeling. Her security guards were instructed to keep these visits in absolute secrecy. "If the Queen finds out," she said once, "she'll think I've lost my mind." But most revealing of all, Diana began collecting books about Islam that she hid in her private residence at Kensington Palace. English translations of the Quran, biographies of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, books on Islamic history, texts about women in Islam. She kept them in a locked drawer of her desk, hidden behind official papers and personal correspondence. A close maid revealed years later that she frequently found Diana late at night, still awake, reading these books with an intensity she never demonstrated when reading official royal documents. It was as if she was hungry, the maid said, and these books were the only food that satisfied her soul. But she did all this in absolute secrecy, because she knew that if the British press discovered that the Princess of Wales was studying Islam, it would cause a scandal she wasn't ready to face. The tabloids already pursued her relentlessly over trivial matters. Imagine if they discovered she was questioning Christianity and exploring Islam. She would be publicly destroyed. Third secret, and this is the most important of all, brothers, because it explains not only why Diana was attracted to Islam, but why Allah was attracting Diana. She had an extraordinary capacity for empathy that made her constantly question the artificial divisions between people. While other members of the royal family maintained calculated distance from common people, Diana embraced lepers, held the hands of AIDS patients when the whole world was afraid to touch them, sat on the ground with refugee children covered in mud. But her empathy went beyond charitable actions. She truly felt others' pain as if it were her own pain, and this made her question everything. Why were some people born in palaces, while others died of hunger in the streets? Why would God allow so much inequality? And most important for our story, why were Muslims so demonized in Western media? You see, brothers, Diana had a unique advantage. She didn't just read about Muslims in biased news, she knew them personally. She had visited their homes, shared meals with their families, heard their stories, seen their religious devotion up close. And what she saw in her direct experiences was the complete opposite of what British media portrayed. She didn't find terrorists and fanatics. She found exceptional kindness, generous hospitality, and genuine faith. Families who offered the little they had to receive her. Men who treated their wives with respect and tenderness. Well-educated children who memorized the entire Quran and still played with innocent joy. Entire communities that united to help those in need without expecting recognition or reward. How can it be, she once asked an advisor, that these people who demonstrate the purest values of loving one's neighbor are portrayed as our greatest threat? Something is terribly wrong here. Diana began to believe, and she was right, that there was a systematic disinformation conspiracy, a political and media agenda to demonize Islam and Muslims, to justify aggressive foreign policies and maintain convenient divisions. And this made her increasingly alienated from the royal family itself, which maintained stereotypical views about Islam without ever having really known a true Muslim. At state dinners, when dignitaries made Islamophobic comments disguised as political concerns, Diana challenged them openly. "With all due respect," she would say, her voice calm but firm, "I have been to Muslim countries. I have met these people, and what you are saying simply doesn't correspond to the reality I witnessed." This made her unpopular among certain circles of the British elite. Some called her naive, others a traitor to Western culture. But Diana didn't care. She had found something rare in the world of royalty: authenticity, and she had found it among Muslims. Now, brothers and sisters, with these three secrets in mind, imagine what happened when Diana fell madly in love with Hasnat Khan, a Pakistani Muslim cardiac surgeon. It wasn't just a superficial romantic passion, as the media tried to portray. It was the explosive catalyst that transformed her spiritual curiosity into an urgent question of identity and faith. Because Hasnat wasn't just a handsome and intelligent man. He was the living embodiment of everything Diana had been searching for: genuine humility, unwavering faith, deep compassion, and an inner peace that didn't depend on status or external recognition. He was living proof that Islam wasn't what the tabloids said. It was something transcendent, transformative, real, and for the first time in her life, Diana had to make an impossible choice between the world she knew and the truth her heart had discovered. Hasnat Khan was unlike any other man in Diana's life. He was discreet, intellectually profound, and completely disinterested in fame or status. Close friends reported that Diana would disguise herself with wigs and simple clothes to visit him in his small London apartment, where they would spend hours talking about life, death, medicine, and faith. She fell in love not just with the man, but with the peace he carried, a serenity she attributed to his Islamic faith. But there was a monumental problem. Hasnat's father, Rashid Khan, made it clear to his son, "If you marry her, our marriage wouldn't last more than a year. We are culturally so different. She is from Venus and you are from Mars. If this happened, it would be like a marriage from two different planets." And Hasnat took these words seriously. He loved Diana, but feared that the media circus, cultural and religious differences, and the pressure from the royal family would destroy any chance of real happiness. Diana, however, was willing to do the unthinkable. According to close reports, she didn't just consider converting to Islam, she actually began studying the religion secretly. She wanted to prove to Hasnat, to his family, and to herself that her love was serious enough to transcend all barriers. She even told a friend, "If I become Muslim, they'll take me seriously. They'll understand it's not just a spoiled princess's whim." But how could a British princess, ex-wife of the future King of England, mother of the heirs to the throne, study Islam without being discovered? That's where Ibrahim al-Rashid entered the story in a way I never imagined. It was on a return flight from an official event. I was in the back of the plane, resting after a long day of photographic work. The cabin lights were dimmed, and most passengers were sleeping or resting. Suddenly I felt a presence beside me. It was Diana. She sat down discreetly and whispered, "Ibrahim, can I have a private conversation with you?" My heart raced. In all the years working with the royal family, Diana had never approached me for a personal conversation of this type. "Of course, Your Royal Highness," I replied, trying to hide my surprise. She smiled shyly and said, "Please, just Diana here." What followed was one of the most surreal and profound conversations of my life. Diana began carefully, "Ibrahim, I know you're Muslim and that you're married to Caroline, who is Christian. How do you make it work? I mean, religiously, culturally, how is it possible?" I explained to her that my Islamic faith didn't prevent me from loving my wife, that Islam respects people of the book, and that the most important things were mutual respect, open communication, and understanding of differences. Diana listened attentively, absorbing each word as if it were the answer to a puzzle she had been trying to solve for years. Then she asked the question that would change everything. What if the Christian person wanted to convert? Not out of obligation, but because they genuinely feel a spiritual calling. How would that work? Would the family accept it? At that moment, brothers, I understood everything. It wasn't a hypothetical question. Diana was asking me about herself. She was seriously considering converting to Islam out of love for Hasnat Khan. But more than that, by the way her eyes sparkled when she spoke about faith, I realized something deeper was happening. She wasn't just wanting to convert to please a man. She was truly seeking Allah. "Ibrahim," she continued, her voice trembling slightly, "I fell in love with someone Muslim, and it's not just physical passion. It's as if he showed me a completely different world, a different way of seeing God, of living faith. When I'm with him, I feel a peace I never felt in the cold churches of royalty." She paused, looking around to make sure no one was listening. "But my family would never accept it. The press would destroy me. And his family, they think I'm just a superficial Westerner who wouldn't understand the depth of Islamic faith. How can I prove I'm serious?" I took a deep breath before responding. "Diana, converting to Islam isn't something you do to prove anything to anyone. It's something you do because you recognize the truth of Allah in your heart. If you're seeking Islam just to win the approval of a family or maintain a relationship, that's not the right foundation." She nodded thoughtfully. "I know that, but Ibrahim, something is happening to me. When I visit Muslim countries, when I hear the adhan, when I see Muslims praying with such sincere devotion, I feel something awakening inside me. It's as if I'm being called. Is this real? Or am I just confusing romance with spirituality?" "Only you can answer that," I said gently. "But I can tell you one thing. Allah doesn't only call the perfect. He calls those whose hearts are open. If you feel this calling, don't ignore it. Study, learn, pray. Ask Allah to guide you. And if it's true, He will show you the way." Diana looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Do you think a woman like me, with all this baggage, with all this history, could really be accepted in Islam?" "Diana," I said firmly, "Islam doesn't ask who you were. It asks who you want to become. If you take this step with sincerity, you won't be the Princess of Wales anymore. You'll be a servant of Allah, and there's no nobler title than that." That conversation lasted almost an hour. She asked me dozens of questions about Islamic practices, about how to raise children in an interfaith environment, about how to deal with family opposition, and most surprisingly, brothers, she already had considerable knowledge about Islam. She had been studying secretly for months. In the weeks following that conversation, Diana sought me out 3 more times. Each meeting was carefully planned to avoid suspicion. She was determined to learn more, but also terrified of the consequences if someone found out. "Ibrahim," she told me in our second meeting, "I'm thinking of going to Pakistan, not officially but as a private visit. I want to meet Hasnat's family, I want to see how they live, I want to understand the culture from within. Do you think this is crazy?" I didn't know what to say. On one hand, I admired her courage and sincerity. On the other, I feared the scandal that could result if the press found out. "Diana, if you do this, you have to be prepared for the consequences. The media won't interpret this as a spiritual journey. They'll say you're being manipulated, that you've lost your mind." "I know," she sighed. "But Ibrahim, for the first time in my life, I'm doing something for myself. Not for royal protocol, not for public approval, not for family, for myself. And if that means I have to face criticism, so be it." What Diana didn't know was that time was running out. Hasnat, pressured by his family and terrified of the media circus that a relationship with Diana would bring, was beginning to pull away. He loved Diana, but couldn't imagine a life under constant spotlights. And the more she tried to prove her commitment by considering conversion, the more he felt she was making sacrifices that would eventually make her resent him. In our third meeting, Diana was different. There was a deep sadness in her eyes that I hadn't seen before. Ibrahim Hasnat is pushing me away. He says he loves me, but that our union would cause suffering for everyone involved. He thinks I'm romanticizing the idea of becoming Muslim, that I don't really understand what it would mean. And what do you think? I asked gently. I think, she said slowly, that maybe he's partly right. I really don't know what it would be like to live as a Muslim in the real world. I grew up in palaces, surrounded by privileges. How can I be sure I'm not just falling in love with the exotic idea of a different life? But at the same time, she continued, her voice gaining strength, I feel something real when I read the Quran that Hasnat gave me. There's a clarity, a direct simplicity in the relationship with God that I never found in Christianity. I don't need intermediaries. I don't need saints. I don't need empty rituals. It's just me and Allah. This is real, Ibrahim. I know it is. At that moment, brothers, I saw a woman truly divided. Divided between love for a man and love for Allah. Divided between her duty as mother to the future kings of England and her desire for spiritual freedom. Divided between the person the world expected her to be and the person she felt she could become. Diana, I said carefully, if you convert to Islam only for Hasnat and the relationship doesn't work out, you'll regret it. But if you convert because you truly believe, because you found the truth in Allah, then it doesn't matter what happens with Hasnat. Your faith will remain. She nodded slowly. So what do I do? How do I separate these two things? Pray, I said simply. Ask Allah to show you. If this is true, He will give you signs. He will give you peace. And if it's not the right path, He will show you that too. What happened in the following weeks was tragic and mysterious at the same time. Diana and Hasnat had a final breakup. He simply couldn't live under the constant scrutiny that a relationship with her would bring. He wanted a normal, quiet life, focused on his work as a surgeon. Diana, no matter how much she tried to disguise herself and live a common life, could never escape who she was. But here's what few people know. Even after the relationship ended, Diana continued studying Islam. She didn't give up her spiritual journey. That told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't seeking Islam for Hasnat. She was seeking Allah for herself. In our last conversation, 3 weeks before her death, Diana told me something I'll never forget. Ibrahim, I've decided I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait until William and Harry are older, until they can understand. And then I'm going to do what my heart has been asking me to do for years. I'm going to convert to Islam, not in secret, but publicly, and let the world think what it wants. Brothers, can you imagine the Princess of Wales, mother of the future King of England, publicly converting to Islam? That would have been the news of the century. It would have completely changed Western perception of Islam. It would have shown the world that Islamic faith is not a threat, but a source of peace and purpose. But Allah had other plans. 3 weeks after that conversation, Diana was dead. Dead in a tunnel in Paris, under circumstances that still generate debates and theories today, and with her died the possibility of one of the most impactful conversions in modern history. Today, 27 years later, I still wonder, what if Diana had lived? What if she had fulfilled her promise to convert publicly to Islam? How would the world be different? How would the relationship between the West and the Islamic world be different if one of the planet's most beloved women had embraced Islam not out of obligation, not for marriage, but out of genuine spiritual conviction? Brothers and sisters, this story isn't just about Diana. It's about how Allah calls those whose hearts are open, regardless of their status, fame, or origin. It's about how the search for spiritual truth can happen in the most unlikely places, and it's about how sometimes Allah's plans are different from ours, but always perfect in His infinite wisdom. Diana didn't complete her journey to Islam in this life, but I believe, from the bottom of my heart, that Allah saw the sincerity in her heart. She was seeking, questioning, fighting against everything and everyone to find the truth. And in Islam, intention is as important as action. If this story touched your heart as it touched mine living through it, consider supporting this channel with a super thanks. Your financial contribution helps bring stories like this to more people around the world. Stories that show that Islam is not what the media portrays, but rather a faith of peace, love, and transformation. Before finishing, I want to share something I've carried with me since that last conversation with Diana. She told me, Ibrahim, if something happens to me, promise you'll tell my story. Promise you'll tell the world that I was seeking something real, something true. I don't want to be remembered just as the princess who died in an accident. I want to be remembered as someone who had the courage to question, to seek, to try to find God in an authentic way. Well, Diana, today I'm keeping my promise. Today the world knows that you weren't just a glamorous princess or a tragic victim. You were a seeker of truth, a restless soul searching for Allah, even though you didn't have time to complete that journey. For those who are watching and feel touched by this story, I have a request: share this video, share it in your WhatsApp groups, on your social networks, with your friends and family. The world needs to know that Islam attracts not through force, but through the beauty of its truth. The world needs to know that even a British princess, raised in palaces and cathedrals, can find peace in the words of the Quran. If you're Muslim, write Alhamdulillah in the comments and thank Allah for giving you the faith that Diana was seeking. If you're not Muslim but felt touched by this story, write Subhanallah and let us know what you felt. And if you, like Diana, are on a spiritual journey, seeking answers, questioning, struggling, write Guide Me in the comments. Our community is here to support you without pressure, only with love and guidance. Diana once told me, Islam taught me that no matter how lost you are, you can always come home. And home isn't a palace or a country. Home is Allah. What profound words from someone the world thought it knew, but actually never truly knew. May Allah have mercy on Diana. May He recognize the sincerity of her search, the purity of her intentions, and may He receive her with His infinite mercy. And may we, who have the blessing of living and practicing our faith freely, never take that for granted. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters, until the next story of transformation and faith. And remember, Allah doesn't only guide the perfect, He guides those who seek Him with sincerity. Maybe you're next. Maybe your story will be the next one to change the world. Share this video now. The world needs to hear the truth about Diana and Islam.